Hey, have you ever heard of the largest crocodilian to ever exist? No, I'm not talking about some movie monster or a creature made up by Hollywood. I'm talking about something far more terrifying, something that was real. Imagine a predator so massive that it would make any modern crocodile look small. A beast that didn't need to chase its prey. They simply had the misfortune of getting too close. A hunter that ruled the rivers of South America for millions of years, with an attack so devastating that there was no second chance. Now, think about the strength of its bite. But not just any bite, we're talking about a force powerful enough to crush bones like twigs. Just how strong was this creature? Well, you'll find out later in this video. Little known to the public and almost forgotten outside the world of paleontology, the PURUSSAURUS was one of the largest and most brutal monsters of prehistory. But how did it reach the top of the food chain? How did a crocodilian grow big enough to rival the largest carnivorous dinosaurs? Stay until the end, because today you're going to learn some mind-blowing facts about the PURUSSAURUS that will completely change the way you see prehistoric predators. Let's get started. Imagine a world where giants no longer exist. A planet that, for millions of years, was dominated by colossi like Tyrannosaurus rex, Spinosaurus, and Giganotosaurus, only to see them all vanish in an instant. What was left after the Great Impact? What happened to Earth after the asteroid wiped out the dinosaurs 66 million years ago? The mass extinction at the end of the Cretaceous period marked the end of an era. Earth became a graveyard of titans, where the few survivors had to adapt to a devastated world. With dinosaurs no longer ruling the land, nature made way for a new reign. Not of towering reptiles, but of new contenders, creatures that would rise, evolve, and become the next rulers of the planet. And that's how mammals began their rise to dominance. Once small and insignificant during the age of dinosaurs, they now spread across the globe. They grew. They became giants. Creatures like the giant ground sloth Megatherium, glyptodonts, distant relatives of today's armadillos, and even colossal rodents larger than a buffalo began to dominate South America. The planet no longer belonged to dinosaurs. But in the rivers, the story was different. In the prehistoric swamps and winding waterways of the ancient Amazon, a monster still carried the legacy of the great reptiles of the past. And it wasn't just a survivor, it was a direct heir to the age of dinosaurs, a predator shaped by millions of years of evolution, from a lineage that existed even before T-Rex and Spinosaurus. This monster didn't walk on two legs. It didn't need to chase its prey. Its strategy was different. Absolute silence, the patience of an invisible hunter, and a devastating attack that ended the fight in a single strike. It was the PURUSSAURUS. At 40 feet long and weighing over 17,000 pounds, it became the largest crocodilian to ever exist. If a Spinosaurus had lived at the same time and crossed its path, the encounter would have been unimaginable. Both were giants in their own territories, but their colossal proportions would have made a direct confrontation nearly impossible. Two massive monsters, each with its own way of hunting and ruling its environment. If they had coexisted, perhaps they would have simply avoided each other, because even for the most feared predators, a battle between titans always comes with risks. If T-Rex was the king of dinosaurs, then PURUSSAURUS was the undisputed ruler of the Miocene waters. For millions of years, while mammals expanded their dominance on land, it ruled the rivers as a true prehistoric monster. But how did it reach this level of supremacy? How did the Miocene Amazon become the perfect home for the largest crocodilian in history? We're about to find out, but before we dive in, if you're enjoying this journey through the prehistoric world and want to discover more epic stories like this, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Here, we bring you the most insane creatures that few people talk about. So don't miss out, click the button, and join our community. Let's go. Earth didn't remain a wasteland of ashes forever. After the dinosaurs went extinct, the planet went through a slow yet constant transformation, reshaping landscapes and bringing forth new forms of life. The age of dinosaurs had come to an end, but the survivors of this cataclysm were ready to rewrite history. The Cretaceous was gone, and now it was the Miocene's turn, an era where the world was beginning to look a little more like the one we know today. But not everything was fully settled. The Miocene, which lasted from 23 to 5 million years ago, was a time of transition and dramatic change. As the continents continued their slow drift, new landscapes emerged. Oceans receded, mountain ranges rose, and vast forests gave way to open plains. The creatures that remained had to adapt, and this is when mammals began to dominate terrestrial environments. But what about the reptiles? The impact that wiped out the dinosaurs didn't take out crocodiles, turtles, and lizards. Somehow, they managed to survive the Cretaceous extinction event. Unlike the dinosaurs, many of these reptiles were semi-aquatic or could enter long periods of dormancy, allowing them to endure extreme conditions. So, while mammals were rising as the new rulers of the land, crocodilians remained in the shadows. They had survived an apocalypse, and they were ready to thrive. And that's exactly what happened. Crocodiles grew. They evolved. Some became even larger than their ancestors from the dinosaur era. And in the heart of South America, among endless rivers and lush swamps, the greatest of them all emerged, the PURUSSAURUS. The world it lived in was vastly different from the Amazon we know today. Instead of a dense rainforest, the region was an immense system of lakes, rivers, and vast wetlands, covering much of South America. It was the perfect environment for a predator like the PURUSSAURUS. Calm waters, an abundance of prey, and unlimited space to grow. But the PURUSSAURUS wasn't alone in this land of giants. Miocene South America was a true melting pot of colossal creatures. In addition to the giant sloths and massive rodents we've already mentioned, there were also turtles the size of cars, freshwater dolphins, and even massive caimans roaming the same waterways. But above them all, the PURUSSAURUS reigned supreme. During the Cretaceous, some predatory dinosaurs like Spinosaurus adapted to hunt in the water. But none reached the level of aquatic dominance that the PURUSSAURUS achieved. It wasn't just a massive crocodilian, it was the very definition of aquatic supremacy. In an era without dinosaurs to challenge it, it became the undisputed ruler of the rivers, a creature capable of reaching monstrous sizes simply because nothing was big enough to threaten it. As mammals spread across the land, the PURUSSAURUS perfected its silent reign in the water. Its massive body concealed a set of deadly adaptations that made it one of the most efficient predators in history. Its size, its sheer strength, and its bone-crushing bite were just a few of the traits that made it a true killing machine. Dinosaurs ruled the earth with their colossal sizes. From the gigantic Argentinosaurus, which stretched over 115 feet long, to the intimidating Tyrannosaurus rex, standing at 40 feet, prehistoric reptiles pushed the limits of gigantism to the extreme. But when it comes to crocodilians, no species ever reached the sheer size of PURUSSAURUS. At an astonishing 41 feet long and weighing over 17,000 pounds, it was an absolute beast. To put that into perspective, a modern Nile crocodile, one of today's largest aquatic predators, rarely grows beyond 16 feet. The saltwater crocodile, the biggest living crocodilian, can reach 20 to 23 feet, but even that would look small next to PURUSSAURUS. The only creature that could rival it in size was DINOSAURS, a crocodilian from the Cretaceous period that lived alongside dinosaurs. With similar proportions, DINOSAURS was one of the few prehistoric reptiles that could take on a carnivorous dinosaur. But even so, estimates suggest that PURUSSAURUS may have been even heavier. If placed next to a T-Rex, PURUSSAURUS would look like a prehistoric tank, massive and muscular, while the T-Rex would stand out for its upright posture and powerful limbs. However, while T-Rex was a land predator that relied on speed and impact, PURUSSAURUS didn't need to chase anything. Its gigantic size wasn't a disadvantage, it was its greatest weapon. PURUSSAURUS was an ambush predator. Its enormous body mass allowed it to stay submerged and completely still for long periods, blending into the aquatic vegetation and waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Its hunting strategy didn't rely on speed. It relied on patience and explosive power at just the right moment. And when this monster attacked, there was no escape. Its massive skull, measuring over 5 feet long, housed one of the most powerful bites in history. Its sheer size alone made it a lethal predator, but what truly made it a perfect killing machine was its bite. Up next, we'll break down exactly what happened when the jaws of PURUSSAURUS closed around its prey. Being big is an advantage, but it's also a challenge. Giant animals need to consume massive amounts of food just to keep their bodies functioning, which means hunting efficiently is crucial for survival. In the case of PURUSSAURUS, its hunting strategy wasn't based on speed or relentless chases. It was a predator that never wasted energy. This approach was colder, more calculated, and deadlier. If we look at modern crocodilians, they already show us they are masters of ambush hunting. But PURUSSAURUS took this art to the extreme. It didn't need to hide completely. Its massive body blended into the murky waters of Miocene rivers and swamps, leaving only its eyes and nostrils exposed. Silent, motionless, patient, it waited and waited and waited until some gigantic, thirsty, or distracted creature wandered too close to the water's edge. And when that moment came, everything happened in fractions of a second. PURUSSAURUS exploded from the water like a prehistoric torpedo, slamming its jaws shut around its victim with an absolutely insane amount of force. To put it into perspective, scientists estimate that its bite force reached around 69,000 newtons, stronger than any predator ever recorded. For comparison, a modern Nile crocodile bites with around 16,000 newtons, while the bite of a Tyrannosaurus rex ranged from 35,000 to 57,000 newtons. In other words, PURUSSAURUS crushed bones as easily as snapping dry twigs. Man, just look at the power of that bite. If you're just as impressed as I am, smash that like button, because seriously, a predator like this deserves at least a like, don't you think? But here's the thing, was sheer power really enough? Did PURUSSAURUS rely only on bite strength to secure its kills? Not at all. PURUSSAURUS went beyond that. It didn't just bite, it completely dominated its prey. After its initial strike, it would drag its victim into the depths, drowning it in a ritual of terror that no land animal could escape. This is what made PURUSSAURUS an almost unstoppable hunter. If a giant sloth, a colossal rodent, or even a prehistoric hippo got too close to the river, its fate was sealed the moment those jaws clamped down. Unlike carnivorous dinosaurs of the past, which used serrated teeth to rip into their prey, PURUSSAURUS didn't need deep cuts to kill. It relied purely on the brute strength of its bite. When it struck, its teeth pierced deep into bone and flesh, and the victim was immediately pulled into the depths. The animal didn't just die from impact, it died from a combination of crushing and drowning. This deadly hunting method made PURUSSAURUS the absolute king of South America's rivers. But was there any creature capable of challenging it? Every predator, no matter how fearsome, has its limits. And while PURUSSAURUS was an absolute terror, one of the largest monsters to ever exist, nature rarely allows a creature to reign without competition. The big question is, was there any animal in the Miocene that could have threatened this colossus? On land, giant mammals were dominant, but few had enough strength to pose a real threat to PURUSSAURUS. The closest thing to a possible adversary was the short-faced bears of the genus Arctotherium. These massive bears were formidable predators, weighing over 2,200 pounds, 1 ton, and reaching heights of over 10 feet when standing on their hind legs. If one of these bears ever wandered too close to the banks of PURUSSAURUS territory, it could have led to a deadly encounter for both. But in reality, land mammals avoided entering the water, and that's exactly what gave PURUSSAURUS its absolute advantage. In the rivers, however, the situation was different. The only animals that could truly compete with PURUSSAURUS for dominance of the waters were other reptiles. And among them, one name stands out: Titanoboa. This monstrous snake lived around 10 million years before PURUSSAURUS, but if their lineages had overlapped, the battle would have been legendary. Reaching over 46 feet in length and weighing more than a ton, Titanoboa was capable of crushing even large crocodiles with its muscular coils. However, PURUSSAURUS was no ordinary crocodilian. Its bite force was devastating, and if it managed to clamp its jaws onto the snake first, escaping would have been nearly impossible. Now, I want to hear from you. If PURUSSAURUS and Titanoboa had lived at the same time, who do you think would win this epic showdown? Drop your opinion in the comments. I'm really curious to know what you think. Now, let's continue. Beyond these colossal snakes, Some freshwater sharks roamed the rivers of Miocene South America. Sharks from the Carcharodilus genus, a relative of the infamous megalodon, may have ventured into the estuaries and murky waters of the region. But even if a giant shark entered PURUSSAURUS domain, the chance of a direct confrontation was minimal. Unlike the open oceans, where sharks ruled supreme, the rivers belonged to PURUSSAURUS. The reality is that within the waterways, nothing challenged PURUSSAURUS. It grew with no natural predators, becoming a monster that didn't need to fight for its throne. It ruled by sheer size and strength alone. But as powerful as it was, not even a colossus like PURUSSAURUS could escape time. Millions of years passed, and the Earth continued its course, erasing all traces of its existence. Its bones were buried beneath layers of sediment, its footprints swallowed by the rivers it once ruled, and its story faded into oblivion, until fate brought it back to light. It was only millions of years later, when scientists began exploring the depths of the Amazonian soil, that the first clues of this monster began to resurface. Fragments of a lost past emerged. Immense teeth, colossal jaws, skulls so disproportionately large that they seemed to belong to a nightmare predator. Questions started to arise. What was this creature? How did it live? What did it hunt? PURUSSAURUS, the undisputed ruler of the rivers for millions of years, was coming back to life. But this time, not as a lurking predator in the water, but as a mystery waiting to be solved. For millions of years, no one knew it had ever existed. There were no records, no legends, no trace of its presence. Its body collapsed into the depths of Miocene rivers, buried under layers of sediment, swallowed by time itself. The king of the swamps had been erased from history, but Earth never keeps its secrets forever. Millions of years later, explorers began digging into the depths of South America's soil, uncovering bones that shouldn't have been there. Skulls so disproportionately large that they seemed to belong to some mythical monster. Fossilized jaws, massive teeth, fragments of a creature that defied everything we thought we knew about crocodilians. What exactly had been found? The first traces of this colossus surfaced across South America, with fossils unearthed in Brazil, Peru, Colombia, and Venezuela. But it was in Brazil's Acre Basin where the most complete and largest skulls of PURUSSAURUS were discovered. In 1892, French explorer Émile Arthur Thuer was one of the first to report finding giant fossils in the region, though he had no idea of the magnitude of his discovery. Decades later, the true identity of this predator began to take shape. In the 1960s, paleontologist Giovanni G. Quentin Villanueva was one of the key figures in studying and classifying fossils of PURUSSAURUS brasiliensis, collected in the Brazilian Amazon. But it was thanks to the research of Brazilian scientist Jonatas Bittencourt and his team that more in-depth details about this colossal crocodilian began to emerge. Their analyses revealed that one skull measured over 5 feet long, a size that easily surpasses any modern crocodilian. For reference, the saltwater crocodile, the largest living crocodilian, has a skull that rarely exceeds 28 inches. The skull of PURUSSAURUS was more than twice that size, an absolute prehistoric bone-crushing machine. Scientists quickly realized they were dealing with something extraordinary. Its jawbones were incredibly reinforced, indicating that its bite was one of the most powerful ever recorded. Its teeth weren't just sharp, they were designed to crush bone with brutal efficiency. Dental analysis revealed that it didn't just hold onto its prey, it completely obliterated it. This was a predator built to dominate anything that entered its territory. But these fossils didn't just tell the story of the predator itself. They also revealed what the world was like when PURUSSAURUS ruled. By analyzing the geological layers where its remains were found, scientists were able to reconstruct the Miocene Amazon, a world vastly different from the rainforest we know today. As we've already seen, the Miocene Amazon wasn't a dense jungle like it is now, but rather a vast system of lakes, rivers, and wetlands. This megafauna-filled environment, free from competing predators, allowed PURUSSAURUS to reach its monstrous proportions, securing its absolute dominance over prehistoric waters. But no rain lasts forever. The planet kept evolving, reshaping landscapes, and wiping out its former rulers. If PURUSSAURUS was so perfectly adapted to its world, What could have led to its downfall? Nothing in nature is eternal. Throughout Earth's history, colossal creatures have risen, thrived, and eventually disappeared. And for PURUSSAURUS, it was no different. For millions of years, it played a central role in the ecological balance of South America's rivers. But when the environment began to change, its survival became an increasingly difficult struggle. Unlike the dinosaurs, which were wiped out suddenly by an asteroid impact, PURUSSAURUS faced a much slower but equally devastating enemy, the changing planet itself. As the Miocene transitioned into the Pliocene around 5 million years ago, South America underwent drastic transformations. The vast networks of lakes and swamps that sustained PURUSSAURUS began to shrink, replaced by a drier, more restricted environment. The once wide and deep rivers started turning into narrower, more unstable waterways. But that wasn't the only blow. The giant prey that fueled its massive metabolism began to disappear. The Miocene megafauna was changing, and the massive rodents, giant sloths, and other colossal herbivores that had once been abundant were declining in numbers as new ecosystems emerged. PURUSSAURUS, which depended on a steady supply of enormous prey to sustain its titanic body, faced a fatal problem: starvation. And while PURUSSAURUS struggled against an increasingly hostile environment, a new force emerged: smaller, more adaptable crocodilians began taking over South America's rivers. Unlike PURUSSAURUS, these crocodilians needed far less food to survive and could thrive in smaller bodies of water. They weren't as powerful as PURUSSAURUS, but they were efficient, opportunistic, and, most importantly, resilient to environmental changes. This combination of factors sealed the fate of PURUSSAURUS. Its extinction wasn't sudden or dramatic like that of the dinosaurs. It was a slow collapse, an empire crumbling bit by bit, until one day, the last of the river giants was gone forever. But even though its time had ended, its legacy remained, buried beneath the earth. And today, with every fossil unearthed, PURUSSAURUS returns, not as a predator lurking in the water, but as a symbol of the greatness of prehistoric reptiles that came after the dinosaurs. Colossal creatures have always fascinated humanity. Movies, video games, and literature constantly recreate giant monsters that terrify and captivate audiences. But what if I told you that Hollywood never needed to invent a giant crocodile? It already existed, and its name was PURUSSAURUS. Yet, despite its immense size and terrifying presence, PURUSSAURUS has never received the recognition it deserves in pop culture. Movies like Jurassic Park, Lake Placid, and Rampage play with the idea of massive crocodiles and dinosaurs, but few have ever depicted a creature directly based on the largest crocodilian in history. Take the Lake Placid franchise, for example. It revolves around a giant, man-eating crocodile, but the creature shown in the films is heavily exaggerated and behaves more like a fictional movie monster than a real animal. In Jurassic Park, the Spinosaurus was portrayed as a semi-aquatic predator, but the movie ignored a crucial fact: the true ruler of prehistoric rivers wasn't a dinosaur, but a crocodilian. The closest thing to an accurate representation of PURUSSAURUS was in the game arc, Survival Evolved, where a creature called Sarco is inspired by massive prehistoric crocodilians. But even then, PURUSSAURUS remains one of the forgotten giants of the prehistoric world. If Hollywood ever decides to explore the true monster of the rivers, it wouldn't need to change or exaggerate a thing to make it terrifying. Reality has already done that. Imagine a horror thriller where a team of explorers stumbles upon a hidden river in the Amazon, only to discover that PURUSSAURUS somehow survived. No submarine or steel cage could hold it. No human weapon would be strong enough to stop it. The sheer thought of a 40-foot ambush predator lurking in the darkness of the water would make most Hollywood horror films look tame in comparison. But the scariest part isn't fiction. It's the fact that this predator actually existed. It didn't need movie scripts to terrify its prey. Its bite force wasn't written by a screenwriter, it was real. And for millions of years, no creature that entered its domain ever lived to tell the tale. The truth is, PURUSSAURUS never needed fiction to be terrifying. It was, by itself, a brutal and nightmarish monster that dominated the prehistoric rivers and swamps with unmatched power. It wasn't a Hollywood villain created to entertain audiences. It was real. a colossal predator that crushed bones, drowned massive prey, and ruled the waters with zero competition. Its size, its power, and its bite force exceeded anything we know today. And yet, it was forgotten by time. Unlike dinosaurs, which are plastered across books, movies, and billion-dollar franchises, PURUSSAURUS remains a hidden legend, buried in fossils and academic research. But every skull unearthed, every jaw reconstructed, and every fossilized footprint reminds us of an undeniable truth. Earth was once ruled by creatures that would make even the most fearsome predators of the past look small. PURUSSAURUS was one of those titans, and though its roar has been silenced for millions of years, its mark on history will never fade. So, did you enjoy learning about this prehistoric beast that almost no one talks about? Then you know what to do. Hit that subscribe button for more content like this. Drop a like to support the channel, and let me know in the comments what you think about PURUSSAURUS. Thanks for watching until the end, and I'll see you in the next video.